Hey everybody, my name is Tanea and we are back for day 8 of 10 tips for practical Christianity. We have taken the last several days and just talked about some really practical ways that we can seek God throughout our everyday lives. If you saw yesterday's post, I warned you guys that the last 3 days of this series are ones that you will not want to miss because it's about to get real. And what I mean by that is we're going to be talking about some things that are super important to me, and they are the things that have actually carried me through when these tips or these ways that we're pursuing God, the practical things we do to seek Him, when that stuff gets hard. We're going to be talking about the ways that I have been able to persevere. And so that's what I mean by it's about to get real. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is when we really decide in ourselves, what are we going to do about practical tips? What are we going to do about our walk with God? So today's tip is all about grit. Grit is a term I'm sure you all have heard. But to me, grit means godly resolve for internal transformation. So resolve is something that we have to have, a determination within ourselves that we are going to pursue something even when it's hard. And so that is where this term grit, it just seems like the perfect term for stirring up in us a passion to follow God. So I'm sure that many of us have been listening to these tips, and we've probably heard many like it before, and we've heard things like, how to read the Bible and how to be in God's presence and how to memorize scripture. And it can feel so daunting. It can feel like you're giving me the why, but I just can't find the energy to do it. I just don't have the time to do it. I just don't have the right people around me to do it. And you want to, and I know that feeling of you want to do it so bad because you love God and you want to love Him more, but you feel like the desires inside of you aren't even the right desires. And we've talked about that a little bit throughout the series, where I've shared things that I've done to pursue God, and I don't feel like it. I don't want to do it. It seems like work. And I think that for a lot of us, that can be a place that we stop. And so when we come to approach these tips, they're not just things that we can input to receive a certain output. It's not a formula or just a box we can check, but it has to be from a relationship with God. It has to be from a level of passion that drives us forward when everything else around us is hard. And it has to be personal for each of us. We can't have somebody else's grit become our own. We have to find our own grit so that we are gripping onto the passion that we have for God. And that's what's going to carry us through, even when it's hard. And so for all of us, in order to even make these tips work in our lives, I think it's important that we ask ourselves, what is our why? And why do we want to pursue God? And then also identifying, where do we stop? Where have we stopped in the past? Is it at a certain energy level? Is it a certain time of the day that we stop? Is it around certain people? Or maybe it's the lack of certain people in our lives. Where do we stop? And identifying that is going to help you get through that stop so that you can keep going further with God. And so there's all these different stops along the way, but finding out what yours is right now in this season, knowing it is going to help you move past it. It's going to help you overcome it. It's going to help you persevere. Perseverance. I dove into the term grit and the terms of perseverance. And so perseverance means continued effort to do or achieve something despite difficulties, failures, or opposition. It means steadfastness. So having perseverance is an element of having grit. And it means that we keep going even when it's hard. Even when we have a stopping point that's normal for us, we keep going beyond that. And then I looked up the term grit as well, just to add some depth to my meaning of grit, which is godly resolve for internal transformation. The definition of grit, one of the definitions, is an individual's perseverance of effort combined with the passion for a particular long-term goal or end state. And so that is talking about we're going for a long-term goal. And our walk with God, it is a long-term goal. Even if you do all of the tips that we've talked about throughout the series so far, but you're just doing them, you're not going to be able to make it long-term because you don't know why you're doing them. You're doing it, and that's a good place to start. But if you don't have something inside of you that says, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to go for God in the way that works for me, how it fits with my life, and I'm going to dive in and seek him with a passion. Even when there's no people, no money, and no time, I'm going to do it. And that is what perseverance is about. That's what finding our grit means. And it has to be personal to you. And so today's tip is all about the encouragement of perseverance and of grit and of being resolved to go after God, because these tips are just tips. They're just words. They're just things to say, unless there's something individually in each side of us that has the passion to walk them out. And James 1:12 has a promise for us about that. It says, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." So this verse is telling us that if we find our grit and we're resolved to follow God until we're internally transformed, even when there's no money, no people, no time to do it, we're going to receive the crown of life. Our reward is in that relationship with Jesus, where we get transformed from the inside out. And so these practical tips are ways to get us started. They're the beginning point, and honestly, they're probably even the prequel to the beginning point, but there's something to get us going. And so I encourage you, find the ways, the practical ways that work in your life so that you can seek God, and that's good, but more so, find your grit. And then hold on to that. Hold on to your love for God. Hold on to the end goal, the end result, no matter what. Even when there's no time, no money, no people. Go for it. And I promise you that you will be transformed, because that is how the presence and the love of God works. So today's tip is about grit, godly resolve for internal transformation. Find your godly resolve and you will be internally transformed and you will go deeper with God. So I hope this helps. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about the desires of how to move forward with our desires with God. And then on day 10, I want to pray for you guys. So stay tuned. We're almost there. This has been amazing.